Hey folks, welcome to Pro Football Ireland. We are sitting at the moment just over a week away from the start of the NFL season, but we've got more important news tonight. Before I start about that, Michael McQuaid, Daire Carragher. Daire is part of our college coverage, but also covers the Packers, not just very well for 24/7 Sports. Wow, Daire, 27/4, eh? And Packer Report 66 on X and different outlets also. Daire, you're appearing on a lot of these podcasts at the minute. It's good crack. I was chatting to you, man. How you getting on? You good?
Oh, 100%. Yes, it's great to be on. I'm like a regular now. I feel just like one of the crew here now. So it's good feeling.
I think my golden rule is, and I think I've said it to the NFL team, it's like any Packers talk, I'm just bringing Daire Carragher on, not because he's an Armagh man, but because basically, look, you are the go-to guy for the Packers in Ireland. Never mind anywhere else for a start, because you're getting all this information. You're like you're like not to go into information here, but you're a wee bit like Schefter today. If you're listening to this podcast, it's after a certain period in the evening for us, certain period in the afternoon. The 53-man roster deadline is hit in the NFL, and the reason that we're doing this one-off special podcast, special video as well, hi to everyone watching, is because that Dan Whelan, who actually came in, Dara, and went up against O'Donnell for the job when O'Donnell was released yesterday. Dan Whelan has made the final 53 roster. Now, I think there's so much that we can go into this in a short period of time, but I guess just first off, what's your reaction to this moment? And we'll talk about the battle in a wee second, but we are both still relatively quite young. You're a lot younger than I am, of course. Don't get me wrong. You can tell me I'm not young if you want, but um, like this is pretty historic. Like this is something that me and you have never seen before in our lives, and we are now potentially sitting. I think we're quite confident on this. Depending on we haven't seen or we haven't heard the pressers because this is pre-recorded, but we would expect now that Whelan will make his debut in a regular season game for the Packers against the Bears next Sunday. In doing so, becoming the first active Irish-born NFL player in 38 years next week. You might not see him a lot in the field, though. I presume you're hoping, Dara, yeah?
And the less I see of him, the better, which is interesting enough. But no, listen, he came into training camp and was expected to just sort of be a second leg there, the way teams would have, a fourth arm at quarterback. It's just a similar job at punter, but really exceeded expectations ever since the very beginning of training camp. It was clear after a week or two that he was giving Pat O'Donnell a run for his money. O'Donnell was the oldest player on the Packers roster this going into the season before he was released. So that in itself is a big move to cut your elder statesman of your team for a younger player. Whelan obviously hasn't played an NFL game. No Irish player has been in an NFL game for 38 years, as you know yourself, Michael. So yeah, just a really, really cool moment. And for me personally, just great that it's on the Packers. Couldn't have rolled any better.
Have you bought your jersey yet? No, or is that all still TBC?
I mean, 41 is a beautiful number. I might have to get invested in that there. It's just for some reason it works on a punter. 41. I'm a big fan of it.
The student loan's going to be gone in the week there, man. Best luck to you on that there. Look, just going into it, I guess for the general Irish fan, this has been like I've covered the league for 6 or 7 years. I'm very, very fortunate to do so, and I know you've covered it for a few years as well, Dar. Like obviously being a fan 10, 12, 15 years, and this off season has just been nuts. Obviously we've had the Steelers come into the Irish market, and we've now got this, and it just feels like everything's moving in a direction where fans on the island of Ireland, both north and south, wherever you're from or wherever your domination, just whatever your denomination is, like at the end of the day, I feel sometimes that this island is sometimes a wee bit left behind with everything else, and I feel like this year that's really taken a jump forward. I think a lot of people now will have the Steelers as their second team to an extent because they'd love to see it grow and potentially at some point have a game over here. And I feel a lot of people now, Dara, will look at Dan and just root for him. And look, I know I certainly will. I haven't decided as of right now who I've got winning the NFC North, but certainly I think it would be amiss of anyone not to wish Dan the very, very best. And you just know, I guess, sort of going into what you said there, Dara, you know how much this moment means for his family, because look, at the end of the day, there's lads that have got good news today, there's lads that have got bad news today, but this is a guy that went undrafted, got picked up by the Saints. It didn't work out for him, and a lot of people then, it could have been very easy for a lot of people then just to write themselves off and go into a career somewhere. Dan said no. He went into the XFL, was one of the, I think it was top two or top three players in his position, playing for the DC Defenders. And just look at him now. I mean, did you really think whenever he came in at the start of camp that he would obviously put up a fight, but did you really think that we get to this point where we literally have an Irishman playing Please God next week?
I mean, it's really, I mean, no, I didn't see it coming. Honestly, Pat O'Donnell was more than good for the Packers last year, and there's never really been any issues since he's only been the punter there for a year, but there was never any issues with him last season. Um, Especially considering the Packers put a massive emphasis on special teams. Special teams coordinator Rich Bisaccia, he used to coach the Raiders for a season. He's like now got an assistant head coach title. He's like they've put a lot of emphasis into this. They returned all their key special teams players minus Mason Crosby, obviously longtime kicker, and now O'Donnell. So I think like we really didn't see this coming, and I know it's something that people who are outside of the Packers sphere wouldn't understand, but this is a team that brought back like I think eight of the top 10 special teams players in snaps last season. They made conscious efforts to return players who aren't starters on defense but are big special teams guys. So for them to go in a completely new direction at punter for a player who's never played a game before, it's really interesting. It's exciting to see. Obviously, we've heard so much about um the sheer leg that he has on him at preseason and training camp. It's not exactly the finesse that he's winning his job by. It's just he can absolutely welly a ball, which is something that a lot of people on this island are able to do. And maybe now this can just create an even bigger flow of Irish players over to the NFL. Hopefully, please God, in the next 10 years or so.
I can't go too much into this. Don't want to get in trouble, but I will say this. I had the opportunity recently to speak with the last guy that played in the NFL from Ireland, a guy called Neil Donoghue, who last played in 1985. He played for a number of different teams, including the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the St. Louis Cardinals. It feels weird saying the St. Louis Cardinals because there's two different teams with the same name. However, I distinctly remember, I haven't got the quote in front of me, Dar, but I distinctly remember speaking to Neil and sort of just saying to him, are you surprised that it's taken so long for a player to make it in the league again? And I think not to spoil things or to go into too much of his journey, he went over and just somehow made it. He was playing soccer beforehand, League of Ireland basically. And if you look at Dan, like Dan played rugby before anything else, and then he went to football. So the odds are stacked against these guys from the get go, not in a negative way. It's just I don't think that they're ever expected for it to work out. Whereas now you've got guys like Ty Gleader that's trying to get guys into the league. I mean, we've got Connor Mangan joining our coverage this season, and we've got guys. I mean, there's a guy, Andy Quinn, playing for the NFL Academy. So it feels like this is going to be the start of, not, I wouldn't say an avalanche, but definitely a few players in the league over the next few years. And for you, Dara, I mean, you're still a young boy. If you want to start kicking balls, go for it. That's my advice.
I don't know if it just have that amount of leg on me now. I think Gaelic football might be the safe bet. Just the amateur sports. I don't know if I'll ever venture over there. And should I enter the kicking king competition for tag leaders? That's a regret of mine. Maybe next year we'll give it a go.
And look, we're obviously recording this podcast prior to this happening because it's such a big deal, and we want people to get the information. I guess the one thing that we'll not really be able to cover, Dara, is the inevitable press conference after the 53-man roster is announced. And one of the questions that they will ask is about the competition for the position and if it is Dan Whelan's job. So we don't have the answers to that. I would presume, and I think maybe you might agree with me, like I feel like it is, for him to beat out O'Donnell and sort of cement himself. I think it's his job going forward until he loses it, and please God that doesn't happen. So it's interesting, but then also, Dara, we've now had a situation this year where teams have been able to keep as many players as they want on the roster until the very, very end. Like last year and the years before, you were cutting guys left, right, and center. So it is a different sort of sphere this year. So I'm presuming you're confident.
Oh yeah. I'm fairly confident that this is going to be this is Whelan's job to lose now for the remainder of the season. The Packers are notoriously in every facet. They trust the guys that they have at the wheel. Whether it's a head coach, they'll keep them around for 10 years. Like you've seen if anyone's been following their kicker, Anders Carlson's the this season. He's a Daniel Carlson's brother, Raiders kicker. He struggled a lot in preseason, but no matter what, they're saying this is our guy for this year. We don't care how many kicks he's gonna miss. This is just we're gonna stick with him until we really feel for something has to change. So that definitely bodes well in Whelan's favour. That even if there are any kind of mishaps early on, that he should have the job security of a full at least first season here at Green Bay, which is just brilliant news. Um, One thing I will note, Michael, is we hear all this talk about a potential Steelers game in Ireland. Well, now we know that the NFL's international games are played by home teams who have that extra ninth game, which means that so the AFC teams, which is what the Steelers are, will have an extra home game in 2 years' time. One of the home fixtures on that schedule is home to Green Bay. And I'm just now wondering, is there any chance that we could get a Dan Whelan homecoming in Crook Park in 2025? God willing, that happens.
Man, let's not even start this conversation. Oh my god, I'll not sleep tonight. Not here. I love it. But you just mentioned two things there. We said at the start of the podcast, two things that weren't even like a remote possibility at the start of the year. I remember chatting to a boy in a bar in Munich last year from Kerry. I'm not going to say his name. He follows me on Instagram. I don't want to embarrass him. But I was chatting to his mate and I was like, mate, I'm telling you, I reckon we'll have a game in the next 5 years. And the boy goes, no, we won't. That's never going to happen. And in the guts of 6 to 7 months, we have two teams in the global markets with the Steelers and the Jags on the whole island. And we now have a player in the NFL. So I think it's a testament to how big of a moment this is. And look, obviously a huge congratulations to Dan and his family. It's a pretty cool moment, and I think it's a testament also to the sort of player he is. Daire, that he has went in, he's earned his keep. He's been through a battle. Do you think there's many Saints fans in Ireland just tonight going, "Oh my God, this could have been us"? Because I feel like there's
this was their guy last year. Like,
yeah,
I know we've had yeah. I mean, it's just what happens in the NFL every year. You see guys who don't make it one year come back, get better, and make it the next. And a lot of it comes down to the situation. Pat O'Donnell maybe could have lost a step or two after last year. I know a punter doesn't lose a step, but lost a yard or two of this kick. You know what I mean? So it's that sort of thing where right timing, right situation matters an awful lot in these battles. And so luckily Dan just seems to have struck the right place and the right time in Green Bay this season.
We'll definitely give it a punt anyway. Finally, give me a punt and tell me this before we pop here. I think we've talked about this on and off a wee bit. We talked about it in the Aviva, but genuinely for you, with Dan Whelan now and with this team really rebuilding around a young quarterback, but more so a guy that's been there for a couple of years in Jordan Love. In your mind, are they going to win the NFC North, or are you reserving judgment until you see what happens next week?
I wake up some days and I say, yeah, this team's just going to come back and act like nothing never happened and they're going to win the North again. Other parts of me think there's got to be growing problems. Honestly, this is probably the deepest their roster has been in at least since Matt LaFleur took over in 2019. They have at key positions, they are just loaded with starting caliber players. They had an absolutely phenomenal draft this year. All these players look just players have blown expectations out of the water. You're going to see 5th round picks, 6th round picks flying all over the field for Green Bay this year, and they can all play. They've done an excellent job so far this year in really shortening the time it's going to take to rebuild because they can compete right away this year. I mean, they're not going to win the Super Bowl. I think we can safely bet that. But in a division and in a conference which isn't overly strong and with probably the easiest schedule they've had in quite some time, at least all throughout the Rodgers era, they had hellacious schedules, it seemed like every year. They've got a really nice run in this season. I think they will have a winning record. I can't guarantee that they win the division.
Interesting. I love it. Dar, thanks for popping on and doing this. I massively appreciate it. I just want to put in record again because it texted you boys earlier, but that really enjoying the college coverage. I think what we're putting out this week for week 1 is There's nobody else in Europe doing it. I think it's really good. If you're in the UK or Europe and you're not from Ireland, listen to it. It's good stuff. These boys are great crack. Dar, appreciate this. Enjoy it. I hope he keeps the number. I hope he keeps the number 41 for you. And I look forward to driving around South Armagh and look out for a Daniel Whelan jersey over the next few weeks. But here, go me Muggins, and I'll chat to you soon, sir. Thanks, buddy.